Buckle up. It's time for the Champions of Cinema podcast.
Welcome, sports fans, to the Ultimate Cinematic Arena. I'm your host, Joe Walker, and this is the Champions of Cinema podcast. Fellow producer James Marshall and I are diving deep into the heart-pounding world of sports films, the victories, the defeats, and the unforgettable moments that make us cheer, cry, and believe in the power of the underdog. James, it's season 2, episode 9, and another family-friendly episode. What are the 5 reasons why people should watch Little Giants, James?
It's a true underdog feel-good story for the whole family.
There are cameos from some of the 90s most iconic American footballers.
One of the final films that Rick Moranis made before his retirement.
More sports movie tropes than Super Bowl rings on Tom Brady's fingers.
And Steven Spielberg was inspired to make this film after watching McDonald's Super Bowl commercial.
Which sounds like one of the most ridiculous reasons to make a movie ever. But if you watch that commercial, this movie is completely ripped off from that commercial.
I watched it again just now, and I was just like, wow, that's amazing. I think McDonald's should be able... Poor McDonald's. I feel so sorry for them, getting ripped off like that. I'm sure they could really do with a couple endorsement checks from a blatant copy and paste of. But no, good. I've really enjoyed this film, Joe. This really surprised me.
Well, I'm glad. It's a really positive kids movie about sports.
And it's kind of similar to I guess it's kind of similar to a lot of American football films, but I'm really looking forward to comparing this to next week's film, which we'll talk about at the end. And how it's kind of similar in that you've got lots of players that are kind of highlighted and stuff, and there's a coach there. And yeah, it's great. I really enjoy it.
Today we're covering the 1994 film Little Giants, starring Rick Moranis and Ed O'Neill. An absolute top to bottom, fantastic sports movie for young children and young people. So if you're listening to this as a family, hopefully we'll make it so that this episode is family friendly. There shouldn't be any swears. Before we get into the nuts and bolts of this movie, James, what have you been watching recently?
Not many films. I mean, at the time of recording of this, we've just had Thanksgiving, so I've been watching a few of the Thanksgiving games, and it's quite fitting that Thanksgiving sort of ties into someone that we see in this film. What about you?
Well, we've been talking a little bit about some of the classic, sort of gangster movies that we like watching. Maybe some classic Scorsese, things like that. I think that doing Raging Bull last week sort of brought up with me how much I enjoy those older movies, and then really yeah, some older stuff, some classic stuff. So we've given a bit of an intro into the movie that we're watching this week. But James, can you give us a summing up of this movie in a Japanese poem known as a haiku, please?
Of course I can. Underdogs unite. Small and timid, they fight with heart, giant in spirit.
Nice, I like it. Yeah. And it really is an underdog story, this movie, isn't it? It is a proper...
It's about as underdog as you get. It's about a group of kids who are kind of outcast, the kind of classic get picked last at playtime, during lunch. And they've got the team to themselves, run by a coach was basically the same as that when he was a kid. So it's kind of great. It's kind of like a coming together of lots of things, and it's a fantastic celebration of what's amazing about sport, particularly at a young age.
So yeah, we're going to get into this one, and we're going to talk about the 3-act structure. We're going to go through each act of the movie. Usually movies are made up of 3 acts, and we're going to talk about each act and then delve into a little bit of information about the some of the characters, some of the story as we go through that. So
cool.
We're going to get you started off with Act 1, which we call The Underdogs Assemble. So in the small town of Urbania, siblings Danny and Kevin O'Shea are polar opposites. Kevin, a former football star, is the town's golden boy and coaches the local Pee-wee football team, the Cowboys. Danny, often overshadowed by his brother, runs a gas station and lives a quieter life. Tensions rise when Kevin rejects Danny's daughter, Becky Icebox O'Shea, from the Cowboys, deeming her too rough for the team despite her clear talent. Angry and determined to prove a point, Becky convinces Danny to start their own team, the Little Giants. They recruit an eclectic mix of outcast kids overlooked by Kevin, including a scrawny kid with asthma, a nerdy strategist, and a shy boy with a crush on Becky. The rivalry between the brothers intensifies as they prepare for the town for the championship game, which will decide whose team will officially represent Albania. I love how this movie starts. I love the flashback with Danny and Kevin as kids, and how they're going off to play football together. And I love how those kids are almost perfect representations of the older actors playing the same characters later. You know, that Kevin is constantly chewing gum, all those kinds of things. And it's really nice to start a football movie, as often we do with football movies, with a tryout scene, because tryout scenes, they really give you a flavour of who characters are. They give you an understanding of what's going on, and it sets up your premise for the movie really quickly. This one just gets straight into the action. It's nearly a 2-hour movie, but it flies straight in, and you're straight away transported into this beautiful sort of like middle, classic apple pie America sort of town.
I love that. Apple pie America. Yeah.
It is a bit apple pie America, isn't it? You know, and it gives you that real feel that this is important to the people of this small town, and that their hero, Kevin O'Shea, is going to do some good for their Pee Wee football team, right?
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely.
How do you feel about Kevin? What's your opinion on Kevin?
Kevin's a weird one because I feel like he's set up to be like the kind of antagonist, but like the fact is that like he is like a good coach.
Yeah.
So it's not like he's incompetently bad, or he's the same level. He's just like a personality opposite down, but he is just a good coach. It's just that his style of play isn't inclusive because he's obsessed with winning ultimately. Kevin's method of having win at all costs, which means, not wasting time giving reps to kids that probably aren't good enough in his eyes, it seems a bit harsh. And that's kind of what creates that perfect juxtaposition with Danny, his brother, who himself was a bit of an outcast as a kid, who's like, well, okay, how about we make a team, or how about make another team that includes the underdogs,
the misfits,
and then obviously has the misfits kids, which I think is kind of brilliant, really.
So I had a real good think about these two characters and how they're almost represented by their jobs in what they do in the community. Let me just lay this out to you.
Yeah.
So Kevin O'Shea, who's played by Ed O'Neill, you might know him from Modern Family as the main dad in that. He is the main coach for the Little Cowboys, and his job is that he is a car salesman, shiny, new, flashy. Okay, that's what he's all about. Get yourself a nice new car. We want something that's going to be good, right? So he's got a great football pedigree. He's won a Heisman Trophy. He's played. He won 3 state titles, and he's won a national title, collegiate title. Doesn't necessarily say if he played in the NFL or not, but it sort of lays out that. But he's definitely more suited to high school or college sports. That's what you probably should be coaching. Whereas his inverse is his brother Danny, younger brother, who runs the town garage, who is a worker, a mechanic, and repairs broken things.
Oh, amazing! Oh, I love it. Yep. I love it.
So
I was wondering where you were going to go with that. I love it. Yeah.
He doesn't have any pedigree for coaching, apart from the desire to see things work and supporting the kids with less opportunity. He is the classic sort of like reduce, reuse, recycle kind of guy.
Give
where
unwanted
he's just like,
things a second chance.
Give unwanted things a second chance. Don't go and buy just a new car from my brother. Let's fix your current car. The current car is fine.
I love it.
He's an innovative thinker. He works around his problems, and his most important thing to him is like bringing the community together. That's what he wants to see, is bringing the community together. And even when at the end of the movie, not to spoil the movie, at the end of the movie when they win, he's bet his brother that they'll win, and if they do, he would get his brother's car dealership, or he would give up his garage, vice versa. and he wins, and he says to his brother's like, look, you're not going to sort of like take me up on that, or you take my business away. And he says, no, he says, there is one thing I've always wanted.
Throw my brother out onto the street. Yeah,
exactly. And he says, he actually wants both of their names on the town water tower to say, that Urbania is the home of the O'Shea brothers rather than just Kevin O'Shea. So, but yeah, let's talk about how they sort of get them trained. James, talk us through Act 2.
So Act 2, training, chaos, and bonds. Little Giants struggle to form a cohesive team. Their practices are chaotic, and their unconventional group faces ridicule from the more polished cowboys. Danny and Becky work hard to inspire the kids, using unorthodox methods like trick plays and creative drills. Meanwhile, Becky begins to question her place on the team. Torn between being one of the boys and wanting to be seen as feminine, she develops feelings for Junior, the new kid and star quarterback. When she overhears Danny debating whether she should stay on the team to avoid getting hurt emotionally, Becky quits, leaving the Giants without the leader. Mm-hmm. As game day approaches, Kevin mocks Danny's efforts, further fueling their sibling rivalry. Despite setbacks, Danny rallies the Giants, encouraging them to believe in themselves and embrace their differences as strengths.
Okay, so let's talk about this Little Giants team and some of the kids that are in the Little Giants first and foremost. Give me some breakdown of who the Little Giants are. Talk to me about the Little Giants for a start.
So the Little Giants embody the classic underdog spirit. They're a group of kids who don't fit in traditional molds, but bring diverse talents. They have lots of creativity, and they bring a lot of heart to the field. Their unity and their willingness to embrace their differences set them apart the Cowboys, who are kind of their foil, their counterpart, which highlight their abilities.
They're sort of almost a gang already, right? I don't know if you've not seen the movie The Sandlot, but I think that's got like a gang element to it, where they're a group of kids who they are friends off the field to begin with. They all hang out together in Danny's, workshop by the looks of it, that they use as like a gang hideout. But they are then sort of coming together to want to play football as well, which brings them their strength, really, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And over the course of the film, the Giants grow from a chaotic collection of outcasts to a more cohesive team. They learn to value each other's unique contributions, and they trust in their abilities, ultimately proving that determination and teamwork can rival raw talent. So,
and we sort of were talking offline. We were talking about these guys, and I said, "Are they almost the tropes of kids? Are they almost like a nerdy kid trope? Each of them as a character, right?"
Well, let's run through it. So, what are the kind of kid tropes we have here? We've got
fat kid.
We've got bad hygiene kid.
Who's bad hygiene kid? Is he the one in the bubble wrap? Oh yeah, well that is fat kid. That is fat kid. Yeah,
well, sorry, I guess fat people are just unhygienic as well.
Wow,
no, that's harsh.
God.
We've got nerd, really geeky kid.
Yeah.
We've
got computer
computer
nerd as well.
Computer nerd, yeah. We've got really just shy kid, like doesn't want to be in the spotlight. We've got sort of overreacting kid, the guy with the little one with the glasses,
the hypochondriac kid.
I like that hypochondriac kid.
I like Rad Tad, who was the one who does most of the lines for the Little Giants. He's the blonde one, and he's got quite a lot of good lines, like when they're doing the break in the huddle, and it's like giants, and he throws his face up to the camera and he's like, "Help us, God!" Like this. He's just he's a cool kid. He's a funny kid, but he's the kid who's the smart mouth kid almost within the group, which I quite like.
And then you've got I guess you've got like the kid who's kind of like doesn't have ability, but is trying to find like shortcuts to help him using like the sticky stuff on his hands.
Hot Hands Hanen, yeah.
Hot Hands Hanen,
well, he's the kid. He's the kid who arguably, we know a lot of these kids in the UK playing American football. They are the the kid who wants to be a wide receiver but has terrible hands.
DB hands,
so he should just play DB, right?
Yeah,
but
yeah, exactly.
He's still holding on to his dream of being Michael Irvin and catching balls, which is quite nice. And then
wants to be Stephon Diggs, but will have to be settled with being Trayvon Diggs, essentially.
That's good. That's a really good analogy. I love it. And then we've got the girl who wants to play boys' sports, right? The tomboy.
I found Becky really interesting, like the inclusion of a girl in a predominantly male sport at this age, really interesting, because you kind of watch it thinking, oh, this is a bit silly, this couldn't really work. But to be honest, when you think about how old they are, they're about 8 or 9, right? Or they're kind of portrayed.
Yeah, they're supposed to be 10.
Age.
They're supposed to be 10, yeah.
Sub 10. I remember, because like, a bit of biology, but like, at this age,
maturation doesn't matter at this point.
Girls, doesn't matter, but if anything, girls kind of mature quicker.
A little,
yeah, a little bit
they
quicker.
do. Yeah, they can.
I remember a lot about how back at middle school, when I was probably about their age here, like the boys' rugby team did a tug of war against like the girls, not like a girls' rugby team, just basically like, you know, the rest of the girls in the class, and the girls won, and we were just like.
No, it goes a lot to say about your athleticism, James, right there.
It was the whole team. I did my best, right? You know, I I put it on the rest of the guys, not me. I was always really good at tug of war. You can kind of mix sports around. I mean, I remember when I played rugby, we had a couple of girls that were on the team, and it didn't really make a massive difference. You know, it's just like
no, it wouldn't do
at this point. Like, you know, 8-year-olds are 8-year-olds. You know, it's not really. It's
the last chance really for like mixed sport to kind of work. Is just pre-teenage years, pre-puberty. Is the last sort of opportunity for this really to work. Now,
no one's
the actors that we have playing these characters. Like... Well, no, that's a really good point. Yeah, so the actors playing the kids in this movie did sort of vary quite heavily in age. You've got sort of 8-year-olds. Some of them are in the 8-year-old range, all the way up to 16-year-olds during filming. Yeah. So. But I guess
mix. that comes from like a demand for somewhat competent acting, right? Which is hard to get from 8-year-olds.
Yes,
because
it's hard. It must be really hard.
The ones that were older had much more speaking roles and stuff, and monologues and dialogue bits.
Absolutely.
So it's kind of better to have a slightly older kid in those situations for acting. But
so a question I wanted to ask you, and because we don't have a quiz this week, but I did want to ask you a question. When you were growing up, do you think you would have been, if you were 8 or 10 and football had come around, would you have been one of the kids that was made it onto the Little Giants team, or do you think you would have been a Little Cowboys selection initially, or would you have been in the reject kids?
No, I would have been a cowboy probably. I mean, I was pretty athletic. You know, in year 6, I won the shot put and the 80-meter sprint. So it's sports day. So. I'd like to think
you would have definitely been a little cowboy.
Little cowboy, yeah.
I would have been a Little Giant.
Really?
I might have been. Yeah, I don't think I was particularly talented as a kid. I might have snuck onto the Cowboys, but I was more likely because I was like the emotional. I was definitely an emotional kid, so I definitely would have been more of a Little Giant. Who
were you? A trope? Were you a trope as a kid? Where would you fit in that category?
Yeah, crying kid. I was probably crying kid.
Fair enough.
I think that's the way that. But I was a pretty kid as well. You know, blonde hair, blue eyes.
Joe, sure.
You know,
you say?
There's a couple of things that I really like about this. That we get some fun stuff. So maybe I'll ask you some of these questions afterwards as talking points. But one of the ones that I wanted to sort of raise at this point, because we've talked a little bit about Becky, is and this is a conspiracy theory for me on this movie.
Oh God,
Becky's really good at football, right? Yeah, Tim for Hat Time. Becky's really good at football. She's violent.
She's like a middle linebacker, right? I think.
She's super. Yeah, she's like fullback linebacker style child.
Fill the hole.
Okay. Yeah. So here's the question: is she actually Kevin's daughter?
Oh God. Well, oh my God, Joe. No, don't do that. Just took Kevin's.
Just think about it for a moment.
Just had some of. Well, some. Clearly, in the O'Shea family, there was some athleticism and there was some nerve, and So it got mixed up a little bit. Maybe the granddad was an athlete, so she took the granddad's sort of athleticism and didn't take her dad's physical traits. I mean that's works for me. Like I'm 6'4". I was quite athletic as a kid, but my dad really wasn't. But my granddad was.
You don't know how athletic those milkmen were in your town growing up, James, when you were
in Russia.
No, but that makes sense.
I was
just sitting there thinking, like, because the mum has left. She hasn't. Sometimes you get mothers in kids' movies or sometimes when you get a missing parent, sometimes they've died. But this one, he's literally, the dad says, like, she's literally left. She left them both. Mm-hmm. And it's sort of like thrown back in his face at some point. Like, she didn't want to be on our team anymore. And then, Becky uses that line, doesn't she, where she says, yeah, she left for a better team. And you're like, damn, that is rough. But, it's kind of interesting. It was just a little thought towards the point. So, okay. So, but just before we get to the big game and the final third of our movie, we do get some really nice cameos at this point.
Yeah.
At the end of the training sort of montage, where John Madden turns up. He's got Tim Brown with him. He's got Emmett Smith with him. He's got Bruce Smith with him, and then they've got that one extra guy that gets the majority of the lines.
O-lineman.
But I don't really I can't remember his name off the top of my head. I had it written down somewhere, but I don't know where it's gone. And he's kind of like, it feels like they could have had one extra person as a huge name, because I think the other three all went into the Hall of Fame or had Hall of Fame careers.
Should have had Lawrence Taylor.
But he didn't, unfortunately.
Well,
it would have been 2D linemen.
Hey kids, this is how you find the vein and you get the
don't smoke crack, as he says in the Waterboy.
Don't smoke crack.
But it's quite nice, isn't it? Because we get like this bit where each of them learns. Yeah, they all learn a little bit of stuff about building confidence, don't they? It's quite nice. Yeah. And even what we get is
quick little boot camp, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and we get Danny asks that question. He says, "Good luck." To he says, "Oh, have you got any last words of sort of wisdom for me?" And he just says, "Good luck." And he says that Madden sort of says the words of support that says, "Working together as a team is the most important key to success." And I wanted to ask you a question of, have you ever been on a team that didn't work together as a team but was still successful on the field, or do you prescribe to the John Madden statement of that the most important thing in team sports is being a team, because you can overcome more as a team?
I think so. I think unless you're so wildly out-talenting your opposition, then in those situations, okay, talent can kind of overcome teamwork. But I feel like it's the more cohesive groups which end up winning. Either we all die as individuals, either we come together now as a team, or we will fall,
or we will die.
So we will die as individuals. It's kind of it's the ultimate, like, you can see like the teams that do well, they look like one sort of organized mass, one organized group, where it's like everyone's actions, everyone knows what the other people are doing, everyone's sort of feeding off of each other. It's the groups where everyone's trying to fight for spotlight, everyone's all performing in spite of each other as opposed to in arms with each other. I think it's massive. I think it's like, if in the situations where like maybe you are out talented, the solution is teamwork as opposed to trying to out talent and just brute force your way through things.
Sweet. So we're going to get through to Act 3 and sort of like the big payoff really for the whole movie, which is the big game. And the championship game arrives. The whole town gathers to watch. The Cowboys dominate early, and it seems like the Giants are outmatched. It's 21-0 at the half. The Cowboys have pretty much just run roughshod over the Giants and beat them up. However, with grit, teamwork, and some clever trick plays, including the iconic annexation of Puerto Rico, the Giants mount an incredible comeback. Becky, who wasn't playing the game because she decided to be a cheerleader, returns in the second half, reuniting with her team and proving that she belongs on the field. In a nail-biting finale, the Giants win with a bold, last-second play, earning the respect of Kevin and the town. The film concludes with the two brothers reconciling, acknowledging each other's unique strengths. Kevin offers to merge their teams, but Danny insists that the Giants have earned their place. The Giants celebrate their victory, proving that heart and determination can overcome even the toughest of challenges. I really like how this final scene is shot.
Yep.
I was thinking about going back and doing a quick count on how many football plays there are in a full game of football, but it feels like really there's only like 20 plays in this whole game, right?
Yeah, and they come in, they kind of cut stuff out, and it's a sort of like a montage, like the Pee-wee version of a game in 40, but instead of like a game in 15 or something. Like,
it's highlights, isn't it? It's mostly just the highlights.
It's highlights, yeah, it's fine. It's kind of like it's like
I love it. I think there's some really good bits. I think that the Cowboys play very simple football. The Giants are playing stuff that's like mostly trick plays, and we get a bunch of like quite enjoyable tropes in this sort of the final part of the movie. I wanted to ask about whether the Little Giants are successful because of their coaching, or is it in spite of their coaching in reality?
How do you mean? How do you mean in spite?
Like what I don't think that Danny is a particularly good coach. I think he's good at bringing the kids together and sort of helping them, but he's not like play calling, is he? You never see him play call.
No. I think he's like
the kids just making up their own plays.
He's the kid version of Dan Campbell, I think. It's kind of like Dan Campbell has his way, like, hey man, we're gonna bite off kneecaps, we're gonna chew off an ear. Like, he has his way of talking to grown men to try and raise the troops and stuff, inspire people. And I feel like Danny's using his own way of doing that. And if you think about it, it's kind of like, well, if you can't out talent people because you haven't got your O-line isn't very good, and you kind of need those trick plays, because it's like it's you're not going to beat people with standard play. You can't beat someone at their own game if you don't have the same talent as them, right? You can't try and just do the same plays against them. You have to do something a bit more innovative. So it does kind of make sense, the method they use. And, I mean, we know from a lot of those trick plays came from that nerdy kid, who Danny sort of utilizes as, a sort of just like just make some fun stuff up, which is different, try and do something which we can use to win, as opposed to trying to do what the Cowboys are doing. So it makes a lot of sense.
And they do, I think all of their plays, offensively at least, that they score from or they do well from, are kind of either trick plays or broken plays. Yeah. The final play is the annexation of Puerto Rico, which is a fumble rooski.
Yeah.
And then they get they run a reverse to Tad at one point, which gets them a pretty decent yards. They do run that one play where they give it to Johnny, who says, "Why would you give it to Johnny? I'm Johnny." Then he runs to his own father and sort of jukes everybody out of their shoes, which is kind of just a cool, honest moment. The moment that I wanted to talk about with you is the sort of turning point of this, is where it's 21 all and they get down to the 1 yard line, and Becky's in, and they're going to give.
We should mention the Cowboys are on the 1 yard line.
Yeah, the Cowboys are on the 1 yard line, about to score. There's not long left in the game. There's a few seconds left in the game.
Yeah.
And he calls 38 toss, which in very traditional parlance is a toss right.
Yeah.
And sort of the love interest, Junior Floyd's mother, comes out of the stands and comes to Danny and says, "Do you remember the play that he won the state championship on?" And he's like, "Yeah." It's like it was a toss. It's like kind of like a toss to the right. He's just like, he's just going to call his own. He's going to call his own play again, and he calls timeout. And he's sort of like, they don't give away that they know the play, and then pre-snap they shift over to stop the toss, which is great. I love it because this is, I think, as a moment as a tropey moment goes, you get this look on Ed O'Neill's face, like Kevin O'Shea's face, where he goes, he says, doesn't he? He says, they know the play. They know the play like this. And it's like, it's brilliant. That's the moment that sort of captures me a little bit, like, yes.
It's so good.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Here's a question, right, though. So if they try running that play, it ends up reversing field and coming back. And there's that sort of like in the air tackle between Spike and
very
Icebox,
Troy
which is really,
Polamalu-like,
Yeah, very much like that. And he doesn't make it. And the clock's counting down. The clock's counting down. It's at 4 seconds, and it's the clock's running. And Kevin takes a timeout, and they've just had a turnover on downs, and he takes a timeout.
How does that work? Okay, so that's a movie mistake then, isn't it? That's actually.
It's kind of a silly trope.
If you stop on
the clock would stop
down,
on a.
Exactly, it would stop.
The
on
clock stops
down.
anyway.
Yeah.
But also, why would you take a timeout to give your opposition the opportunity to score and win? It doesn't make any sense.
I don't know why you take a timeout anyway. Because there's only one play anyway, and it's a turnover on downs, which is like kind of like already. I don't know. Yeah, weird.
It's one of those weird things. I was just
timeouts are dramatic though, right? That's a trope.
Yes.
How many dramatic timeouts can we get where it's like timeout, ref?
Yeah.
You get another chance for a huddle, for a talk.
Yeah.
It's just it's very movie like. It's not like right. It's first down. We've got the ball now. Run the play. Like it's boring. You need to kind of. It's like I doubt they had like a whole like an entourage of like NFL rules experts and stuff to make sure everything was sound and accurate. Like, but they just had.
You know who they needed in this movie, James? You know who they needed, right? They needed Alan Graff. They needed Alan Graff. If you had Alan Graff in this movie, it would have been a little bit better football-wise. A tiny little bit better football-wise.
A consultant, but sports consultant.
Yeah,
sure.
It would have really helped. Something I wanted to ask you about at the end of this, and sort of one of the really nice sort of things is, do you know the Giants? Are they just an epitome of the majority of American football teams in the UK? They have bad equipment. They are poorly organised. They don't have a coach who's very good as a football coach. They do a car wash to buy new uniforms, and they mostly have a playbook made up of trick plays.
I can't speak on that because I've always been on pretty good teams. But maybe that's right. I'm not gonna bowed mouth my fellow players in arms in the sport I care about. But you can make that assessment, Joe.
Well, there's the halftime speech during this game where Danny says they talk about winning and stuff like that, and he says, and I'm just going to read the quote now from the movie which I pulled out of it, and he says, "Whoever said you had to be good to play football? You play football because you want to. You play football because it's fun. You play football so you can go out there and pretend you're Joe Montana throwing a touchdown pass or Emmitt Smith going for a long run."
Yep. NFL Imitation Society.
And even if those Cowboys are better than you guys, even if they beat you 99 times out of 100, that still leaves one time.
You play you play for that.
Just...
You play for that glimpse of like maybe we can win. Like it's not any given Sunday, there is a chance we can win.
Yeah.
No matter how small it is, no sports game unless the Chiefs are playing is predetermined. There's always a chance that if the right things happen, if we get a little bit, if things just go our way slightly, there is a chance. That's kind of what's great about sports, really, and that's why there's so many of the best stories from sports in real life are those kind of like wow moments where it's just like, that wasn't, quote, supposed to happen, or like, what are the odds of that happening? It's just, it's not like, whereas a lot of the things in real life, that is the case, it's whether it's war, things are sort of inevitable. Like we watched Last Samurai. I watched Last Samurai recently. And like the people, the samurai knew they weren't going to win. Okay. They're outmanned against against an enemy that has guns.
Technically superior, yeah.
Technically superior, numbers superior, but it's, let's go out in the mindset that we can win. And
heart.
With heart. And that's sometimes enough, right? So yeah, it's pretty. Yeah, I could see.
I haven't seen Hart win many football games where there's been a huge underdog sort of story, and you don't see it very often. You do see it every now and then, and that's why America loves it. That's why America loves the underdog story. But the reality is that it doesn't happen very often. Maybe it is one time out of 100, as the movie suggests, which is kind of rough, really. But yeah, I mean, as football scenes go, we're talking about youth football, junior football, small-sided, small field, but the football kind of holds up the way that it's shot, right?
Yeah. No, yeah, it's good. I thought it was good football. I thought it was like, the real. I thought it was actually quite impressive. I feel like the quarterback of the Giants probably threw a better ball than a lot of the British quarterbacks I've seen.
It's very possible.
Like, wow,
Junior Floyd has got a good arm.
That's kind of resembling a spiral, and it's going more than 10 yards downfield.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
So I want to talk to you about some of the cool sort of movie magic of this film.
Yeah.
And I want to ask you, do you know who the director for this movie was?
No. Oh, I guess is it the guy that we mentioned in the start, Moranis?
No, Moranis was not the director. He's an actor. So Moranis, there's been some interesting stories about Moranis. So Moranis rose to prominence in movies, in the early 80s, and did a few good movies like Ghostbusters, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. And this was one of the last movies that he did before.
Moranis was Danny, right? Sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Rick Moranis, he actually retired from making movies in 1997, a couple of years after making this. His wife had passed away in 1991, and he took on the responsibility of being the most important parent to both of his children full time by stopping his acting career, which is quite an interesting thing. But the movie was directed by a guy called Dwayne Dunham. Now, Dwayne Dunham only directed the first 2/3 of this movie, so he directed everything up to the football portion, and then was really struggling with the football portion, so they replaced him. But now, Dwayne Dunham is quite an interesting person because he was the editor for Return of the Jedi.
Ooh, my favorite Star Wars. So, wow.
Yeah, exactly. So you can tell why it's got some, like, the story's not terrible, and that maybe really shows with Dunham. He also was the director for Homeward Bound, which is the sort of kids movie about animals trying to get home through the wilderness. It's like some talking dogs and stuff. Okay. I don't think you've ever seen that, but it's quite a well-known thing. It was written by two guys called Swerdlow and Goldberg, who also wrote Cool Runnings and Snow Dogs, which are both other sports movies as well. And it was produced, as we mentioned earlier, by Amblin Entertainment, who is the production company that Steven Spielberg owns. And we said that Steven Spielberg wanted to make it because of a 1992 Super Bowl commercial for McDonald's.
Yeah.
Now, if you watch that clip, there's loads of stuff from that movie, from that advert that is just supplanted straight into this movie, right? So there's the bit where the two dads are holding hands and have their arms up to make the goalpost, and that's in the advert for McDonald's. All of those kinds of things mean that it sort of came together really as a story, but you can almost see why that story's from an advert, from a Super Bowl advert. You can almost see the links to that throughout, which is quite cool. It cost $20 million to make this movie, James, and the sad reality is it only earned 19.3 million.
Just short.
So financially, nowhere close to a success. Its IMDb rating is a 6.4. Its Rotten Tomatoes rating is a 50. So it's a properly, kind of middle of the road movie. Yeah. But I think that it's got a lot of things that you can celebrate when it comes to sports movies that are positive, and celebrate when it comes to sports movies that are made for kids, and to maybe give kids of a certain generation, a certain age, some real enjoyment of, this is why you should be in love with the sport of football. I think this might be maybe one of the first football movies that I ever watched as a kid, and might have really been the catalyst for me falling in love with football initially.
That's great. Pretty great.
Which is strange because I'm not a Giants or a Cowboys fan.
Yeah.
Which I potentially could have been, but I think maybe when this came out, it came out in 1994. I was 10 years old, so I don't know if I saw it at the cinema or if I watched it as a video later or something along those lines. But I think this has had a big effect on me as sport goes.
Amazing.
When it comes to my interest in American football, which is quite fun.
Yeah.
Really.
That's great.
I really enjoyed it. There's even watching it back now. I've probably seen this film over 10 or 20 times, but it's still enjoyable for me.
Yeah, good.
It's fun. It's a feel good movie. There's nothing really negative in the whole movie. There's nothing in it where there's no dark undertone. There's the only thing that you can sort of say is a bit like you're unsure about is why Danny's wife left him, or at least Becky's mum left them. And I think that makes for an interesting story that you don't really ever get any resolution with, but you do get that situation with Junior Floyd's mother being Danny's sort of love interest when they were kids. And that's going to feed in, James, to my sequelizer that I'm going to give you for today's episode. So you ready for this? It's a little bit far-fetched, but just listen to it. Give it some time, let it mull over in your brain. We'll see how this one goes.
Let them cook, as Gen Zs would say.
Yeah. 30 years after the original movie, Spike and Becky O'Shea have been happily married for 15 years. Okay, that's the far-fetched bit. It's Spike that she ended up with, not Junior. Because Junior was her stepbrother, all right? So Junior was going to end up being her stepbrother. They were going to be a family.
Okay.
So it would have been weird.
Right, yeah.
It would have been weird.
Okay.
Have been happily married for 15 years and have their own children, a twin boy and girl, okay? That are just coming up to the age of being Pee-wee football, okay? They still live in Albania, and Junior is now Becky's stepbrother since their parents got together following the movie. Spike and Junior, as brothers-in-law, coach the local Pee-wee football team, still called the Giants, and when the twins, their kids, don't make the team, Becky sets out to make things right and start a team for her kids to play in. Initially, the coaching is tough, as is recruiting, until she calls for some support. The famous O'Shea brothers, her dad and uncle, along with a couple of familiar-faced parents, they reboot the Cowboys to try and prove that family is all football takes to succeed.
I love it.
Yeah.
It's great.
I think this is...
Nice little twist. The bad guys end up being the kind of good guys. A bit like the Karate Kid reboot with Cobra Kai, sort of.
I wouldn't suggest that I've ripped that off at all, but that does sound very close now you say it. Damn it.
Sorry, Joe.
But I think that that's quite cool.
I love it. I kind of love it. I think
the thing is as well, all of the actors are still around. I think everybody's still around in general. But I would love to see the kids, instead of maybe having like, I think you could have a lovely cameo from some NFL players and coaches again, which works. I think it would be quite fun for the parents to be the kids the kids from the original movie to be back as parents of their own kids, trying to make it.
And
into
the kids
Cowboys.
Are exactly the same as they were,
or very similar, or maybe opposite, tropes as well.
I think the same. So the fat kid who's now a dad, he has a fat son who's the same as him, and you have like the And it's like, yeah, I think that kind of mirroring will be quite fun.
Yeah.
Funny.
But I do think that
yeah.
that the fact that it's her husband and brother-in-law that are running the other team would be quite cool. And they're just like, look, you know, sure, you were able to play linebacker in one game, but we know how to win football games. You know, with the offensive and defensive minds, we both went off and did all this great stuff. And she's like, do you know who believes in kids that struggle like this? My 70-year-old father and his brother. And I'm going to get them back in to help me do this. And I thought that really just, it kind of works as a.
And you know what you could also do is like for the football fans, like, oh, like Becky's like the everyone's so used to being like fancy, flashy spread offense. Like, look, like old Danny and Kevin, like, look, what we're gonna do. This is called the I formation, kids. It's like, I like it. Was like, and like, look, I know you play D-line, but we're gonna put number 44 on it, okay? And we're gonna put you right here in the middle. You are the most important person in this offense, and you are just gonna headbutt straight up the A gap into the linebacker's chest, okay? Like,
these kids don't know what's coming for them. Yeah. Mm.
I would really love that. That'd be really good.
Oh dear. But then I think it'd be quite nice for Haynan's kid to be in there, but all he wants to do is one-handed Odell Beckham style catches, and that's why he's struggling to catch the ball. He's not struggling because he hasn't got good hands. He's got great hands, but he struggles to catch.
Or Wilson it now, as the young people are saying it.
Is that what it's been referred to as, Garrett Wilson?
I saw a meme after the Garrett Wilson catch he did. People were like, "Oh, Dad, Wilson me." Like, oh, like Wilson, like the ball. Like, no, like Garrett Wilson. It's just like, that's how it works, right? That's how it is. It's just like, yeah. It's crazy to think that something from 2014 is now considered outdated.
That is true. That is true.
Yeah.
Oh dear. Okay. Just before we crack on with sort of rating this movie and talking about it a little bit more, send me down memorabilia lane. What piece of memorabilia from this movie would you like?
I was thinking at first maybe like a Little Giants helmet, but ultimately that is just like a New York Giants helmet, so I'm not going to go with that. That's a tough one because all the jerseys are just they're not that interesting.
No.
Something which is like it's instantly recognizable. It's kind of a MacGuffin, or like it's important to the film.
There's no MacGuffins really in the movie. The only thing that I see as being sort of iconic was that I quite like the go-kart and helmet with the skull and crossbones.
The go-kart, yeah.
Kind of iconic.
Go-kart was kind of cool, but I don't know if it's like, yes, I recognize that go-kart from this film. But I guess it's like, I think some memorabilia we want.
It's not got a lot, has it? It's not got a lot. But there's a couple in here that are quite nice, just little bits, I think.
If there was some sort of top which signified Little Giants, the helmet is cool. You know, if you can see it's a small helmet as well, that sort of shows like it's a Pee-wee style helmet. Yeah, or or the nerd kids like, or maybe just like a framed picture of the annexation of Puerto Rico. That could be nice.
Okay.
The play like
that's written by or here's a question for you. You could have the map that John Madden draws on.
John Madden
where he writes on the map. That's quite a nice little thing.
I quite like that too. Yeah.
Okay.
With his classic, scribbles and stuff, which he became famous for doing as a commentator. It was kind of amazing. Yeah. I like that.
Interesting.
One of those two.
Give me a rating of: is this a popcorn movie or is this an art house movie?
It's a popcorn movie that has lots of art in it.
Okay.
I think it's like, okay, it's ultimately it's meant to be entertaining. It's based off of a McDonald's advert, as we've mentioned. But like, I think particularly in the end bit, like, it really shows like the significance that sports can have on communities, and the fact that it's not just the players who get involved. It's the parents as well.
Or Fez wearing adults just in the crowd. It's
yeah, sure. Whoever that guy, they need to check his hard drive. yeah, it's like it's not when kids are doing sports, it's not just the kids who are involved and enjoying it. It's the families as well.
I agree.
And it's sort of like, and then the effect that can have on the wider community as a whole. It really shows kind of like why sports is pretty amazing. And I feel like, yeah, if adding the family bits to it kind of gives it that feel good, kind of like arty bit. Yeah, that's kind of that's what the film set out to be. That was sort of the objective of Danny, was like, let's get people involved, because it's ultimately win or lose. It's playing football is the reason we're doing for it, because we want to play football.
Yeah,
and it's kind of it might be seen as like, I think over time it's kind of aged quite well, and you can imagine you know what would have been cool if it was like if it had like Thanksgiving sprinkled into it. It could have been like it could have been like the Thanksgiving movie. That would have been amazing, because then you'd be like, right, every Thanksgiving we're watching Little Giants. Then it would be, I think you could then talk about it being a champion,
because it would then potentially have Home Alone value to Thanksgiving, wouldn't it? Oh, that is clever.
As well as like Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. Yeah. You know, it's like it would then be like, you know, we're showing how much we appreciate the sport and being with and doing stuff with our family, and it's kind of like the whole community. Because like, think about the name of the town, Urbania. Like, it's just the classic suburban neighborhood
really is,
town. You know, where everyone sort of knows everyone. So
good old apple pie America.
I think.
Yeah.
So like, if it had, and you'd talk about the rating. I think like if it had some maybe Thanksgiving overarching theme, you know, it was like the game was on Thanksgiving or something. That I think it could really be a champion. However,
I think you're right.
As it stands, I think it's still good, and it's like I'd give it like a contender sort of.
Oh, so it's a contender for you. I think it falls in contender for me, purely because it does things right. Yes, it is a little bit trope heavy throughout, but we're talking about a kids' sports movie. They are trope heavy. They're meant to be trope heavy. Yeah. They are there for the purpose of giving children a trope into a sports movie. This will be exactly the same when we watch The Sandlot. It'll be exactly the same when we watch Mighty Ducks. It'll be exactly the same when we watch any of those kids' sports movies where they give you a window into that movie, and you'll notice that they're very similar. They're all, it's a bit like Little Rascals and those kinds of movies. They are of a time very much of the same point. But okay, so contender from you and popcorn. I think it's also a contender status, and I think it's very popcorny. I think there's some really fun bits, like the moment. There's a couple of arty bits where, like the moment where the touchdown gets thrown to Heyman to get the game to be level, and the ball turns into the toilet roll as it's fallen into his arms.
Yeah, nice.
It's kind of cute. You know, there's some nice things in there.
But those are those kind of like visualization
techniques.
Those kind of visualization techniques that can help a player.
Absolutely.
That's a very real thing. As silly as it is, it's kind of like, well, if that helps him catch, then he should be doing that every day. You know, so it's kind of like there's a lot of growth going on throughout every character has their own obstacles that they're trying to overcome, and that's just like one example, really. Mm-hmm. So it's great. I think it's really good, and you can kind of it does kind of, even if Spielberg didn't make the film directly, indirect it does sort of feel like it has his sort of touch into it.
There's some sprinkling. There's some Spielberg sprinkles in there, definitely, for sure.
Some clear influence there. Bit of,
So you've given me a rating. We've talked about popcorn. We've talked about art entertainment. Can I ask you if you enjoyed it? Did you just enjoy watching it in general?
Yeah, absolutely. I did. I think I really did. It really made me appreciate more about my time when I was really young playing sport. I felt like I kind of was going back to some memories I had as an 8-year-old.
We all need to kind of do our little bit to help kids feel like sport is important. Being active as a family, being active as a child, just leads to more activity later, and that can only really lead to good things. That brings us to the end of our episode, James. And before we tell people where to get in touch with us, just to thank you really for watching this one as usual. I think it's nice to cover a good sports movie again. If somebody wants to contact us, James, where can they contact us?
They can find us on Instagram and TikTok at Champions of Cinema, or write to us, as some of you already have, at championsofcinema@gmail.com.
Excellent. And yes, please do get in touch with us. Next week, James, just as a final teaser, it's the final episode of season 2 next week. Wow. Final episode. We're going to get through the whole of episode. You know, we're through our sophomore season, and it's kind of important, this next one, because I think this is possibly, to both of us, maybe right up there in the top sort of 1, 2, 3 top sports movies of all time in our minds, because it's an American football movie.
I think before starting this whole podcast, I think it might have been number 1 for me. I think it really has been. I think it's the film I look forward to rewatching the most. It's the film with the scene that I replay the most. And I can't wait to sort of look at it again through the eyes of our Champions of Cinema sort of format.
It's going to be fun, I think, to look through it that way.
It's going to be good.
Yeah, so next week we're covering the 2000, I believe, movie, which is stars some of the greatest actors in the history of sports movies.
Yeah.
Academy Award winner Al Pacino. We've got Academy Award winner, Jamie Foxx. We've got multiple Super Bowl winners, or at least multiple NFL championship winners, both in coaching and Hall of Famers, across the board. Because next
Champions
week
of Cinema legend Aaron Eckhart
and Champions of Cinema legend
Alan
Graff. Yep. Yep. Because next week we're covering Any Given Sunday. Absolutely.
So good.
I think it's going to be a top-notch movie.
We've been saving this one, and now, we're ready to let this.
It is time. I think we've paid our dues to the podcast world. We are allowed to now cover Any Given Sunday next week. So please join us next week for the finale of season 2 with Any Given Sunday.
Yeah.
In the meantime, Joe, hit the music. It's time to put this one to bed. Thank you, James. It's been really appreciated, and I can't wait for next week.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Bye, everyone. Bye.